What's going on, everybody? Another episode of the Real Estate Blueprint Podcast. I am your host, Austin, more than an agent, here with my Dominicano hermano, as always, John Soto. John does real estate. How are you, boss? How you doing?
I'm doing great. This episode today is a little different. It's just you and I are gonna give gems to our viewers today.
Yeah. Let's tap in. No special guest today, but that's all good. And we're going to bring you out today. We are just going to discuss what we see as the top, or at least what we've seen, are the top challenges both for buyers, sellers, investors while participating in this particular market in 2025, and what you can do, some tip strategies, what you can do to beat those challenges or overcome those challenges, and just give you some options to work with. You're more than competent enough to make an educated decision, just as long as you have all your options. So let's dive into it. All right. For buyers, here's an interesting issue. Well, I don't want to say interesting, but it's been present for a while. So it's not so much that buyers are concerned about paying top dollar. It's not so much that buyers are concerned about paying at the current interest rates, which were higher than they were in COVID and so on and so forth. They have no problem with the property tax. They have no problem. But it is a fear that when choosing to do that while buying at the top of the market and being worried about future appreciation as a concern is one of the challenges that buyers are having with diving into the market, even though they can participate in the market. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are every year people saying we're at the top of the market.
Yeah.
So if you keep holding back and not going in, if you have that mindset, you're going to always think it's the top of the market and never get in, and you're just going to lose potential equity you could have gained if you would have bought at that moment you wanted to buy.
So playing devil's advocate, in each market, eventually this will happen. Mm-hmm. Eventually. So is that going to be the evergreen advice? Because technically it's hard to pinpoint when it is. Mm-hmm. But eventually, us, other real estate professionals, where we're given that guidance, it's going to be the year where we're still saying that.
We're always going to say that.
And then it's also going to crash, and then it's also going to be like a shit show. Mm-hmm. So is that an evergreen statement, or how do you, if we stepped into the future, how would you advise people if you knew exactly when that crash would come?
So what goes up must come down. What comes down is going to come back up. Because look at the crash we had in 2007. Prices are higher than before the crash.
Right.
So even if we have a crash, it still will come back up. It's always a long-term play, not a short-term flip and a get-quick-rich scheme.
Right. Okay, so here we go. I'll give you a scenario. Family moves in, they purchase their property, market crashes. As a result of the market crashing, because real estate is something that's impacted. I know in 2008 was good. Mm-hmm.
Let's put a percentage. How much of a correction?
No problem. Let's just, it doesn't even matter. Let's just say, and the reason why I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but let's just say a 10% correction or just 5%. But so, and it's not that much. Let's say 10%, right? So somebody buys a $500,000 house. They move in, they move their family in, there's a 10% correction, right? Technically, I think anything beyond 5 is considered it correct, crashing. But 10%, which is 50,000, right?
Okay,
less in value,
okay,
right? So now, if in the market environment, husband, wife, whoever the case, they lose their jobs as part of it. They need to sell, but now they can't sell. Mm-hmm. I can see that being a valid fear.
100%.
Right? So how would somebody be able to participate knowing that that is the risk, but how would they mitigate that particular risk?
You can't really mitigate a risk of losing a job per se. That's really tricky. It's always good to have multiple income streams. So if you had like a multifamily maybe or something in that case, or extra income to help out with a potential income loss, that's always beneficial. What's the quote? If you have one job or you have zero jobs or it's too close to zero, you should always have multiple income streams or something within that vicinity.
Correct,
hopefully we can
correct.
add that quote there. But I would always advise try to have as much multiple income streams as possible, because if one's impacted, at least you have some coming from another one.
Correct. Yeah. No, my biggest thing is I just want people to go within, like, what's within budget. So God forbid if there was any situation, you know what I mean? Just something that you know you can handle, have the reserves for, have, you know, so on and so forth. Okay.
And that's why when you're buying a multifamily, a lot of the loans that require a couple months reserves, worst case scenario.
But even in multifamily, in that particular case, now multifamily is probably worse, potentially,
if they
because now
the tenants lose their job.
Yes, if the tenants lose their job, you're usually taking on a bigger mortgage than what you personally qualify for.
That
And
is
you can be in a really bad situation. So valid fear, but other ways to mitigate that risk, other ways to hedge against that risk. For anybody that's multifamily, that's the exact reason why we're kind of going in this direction of, you know, obviously you usually want nothing less than 3 units. And as a result, you're able to diversify the type of tenant that's inside. So that way, at least if you're in a state like New Jersey, more of a tenant-friendly state, that, you know, your tenant should kind of be in a third scenario, right? So 33% of your unit should be in some form of either Section 8 or some form of government housing or some form of where it can be guaranteed. That's number one, baseline. The second can be your regular long-term tenant that, you know, they're always paying on time. If you need to switch out the tenant, you can always raise the rent to market value, where some of the government programs have more of a cap on how much you can raise the rent for, right? So that's that. And then your third tier, the remaining third, is like any type of short-term rental or any type of rental in which you can pour gasoline on the potential profits that can come in. So that way everything's kind of balancing out, especially with the short-term rentals. You don't have to worry about people staying in your space way longer than expected. So something to think about, at least for the multifamily owners. All right, so here's another interesting challenge that people are facing. I've faced it myself, which affects both regular homeowners and multifamily multifamily investors, is rising taxes. With cities doing their reassessment, some people's taxes are doubling. I know mine's kind of doubled in Newark, 2 properties of mine. And it can have an effect on the cash flow. Or if you're a single family homeowner, it can, you know, just add strain to your monthly mortgage. What can we, you know, what can we do about that?
So nothing you can really do if the town raises your taxes. At least just try to be as knowledgeable as possible. Do your due diligence. When you're running your numbers, be more conservative. If market rents are, let's say, 22, try to go for around 2,000. If you get 2,200, that's a plus. But try to run your numbers a little bit more conservatively, as well as let's say expenses, water, maintenance, all that good stuff, vacancy. Even though that will make it a lot harder to find a deal. Also look at other alternatives, which, like you mentioned, the short-term rentals. You can get a higher return on that. That's helpful. You can always try to fight your taxes. It's not always guaranteed.
Right, but at least you can put it in motion.
But at least put it in motion and see what can be done. There's a lot of attorneys out there that I think only charge a percentage of whatever they drop in the taxes or something within that. And just have more knowledge. You could always call the township and see what's their plan on reassessment. Is it anytime soon?
Right.
Or figure out that before you get into the deal.
Yeah.
Which a lot of homeowners won't know to ask. That's why you're listening to this episode to start asking these questions.
No, it's a very good point. As someone, and even when I did try to file an appeal, and where the tax year was,
You did it yourself?
I did. Well, sorry, let me back up. With inquiring, I know that the appeal at that point would have taken an X amount of months for it to be reviewed and for there to be a decision on it. And if it had put me in a position where cash flow wise, where I was still at a nice positive number, then I could hold out for the wait. But because it was such a big jump and it killed the cash flow, I was going to have to keep both of those properties afloat while also simultaneously shelling out money for any repairs or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And to do that, or to be prepared to do that for an indefinite amount of time until you finally hear back, was not the best move at the time. And it gave me a means to sell him, obviously look to bust another move with it. But yeah, no, to your point, I mean, there's not really that you can do, unfortunately. Obviously, well, like this, one thing that's definitely you can do is, which is hard for New Jersey because we're number one in the country when it comes to property taxes, but you can start off in a city that has low property taxes, considering the fact that they won't rise that much. But at the same time, that was Newark for the most part. And obviously Newark doubled it, right? So that's not guaranteed as well. But
can rising taxes in a town have a direct correlation with the growth and the future growth of a town?
I would hope. I would hope so.
You would hope so, right?
I would hope so. But yeah,
can't really
think
put
people
that.
even look at their taxes like that, because there's so many other economic factors that are already contributing to the value. I think people more are concerned about their taxes like, yo, what am I getting in the city with it? Yeah. How are the schools? How are the roads? How are the, what's it called? How's the street cleaning? Why is there one garbage can, every mile, right? Like little things like that, I think what people care about more like in their property taxes of like what they're getting for it.
Has that changed within Newark, you think, in the past 5-10 years with this reassessment?
As far as like what people are getting?
As far as what the quality of what they're getting.
I don't, it's in politics in general, right? Like with all the money that's being raised, how do you allocate it properly, right? And it's never it's never allocated properly. A good portion of the time, majority of the time, it's not allocated properly, and. But Newark is moving forward, and other cities that have already been established, obviously they're just kind of continuing their trajectory, but it's it's an allocation issue. But
you think they're rising the taxes because they're giving a bunch of rebates for like these new constructions and all these companies and all these buildings that are coming in. Do you think the rise of the taxes of the other folks is to offset
Yes,
and rebates that they're giving?
Yes, and because
I'm not into politics, so I don't know if this is.
I am. Like, listen, man. Eventually, like, you can't be. Well,
I'm not.
It's hard, but yes, if you're giving all these incentives, like you're gonna have to recoup it on the back end at some point. And the reality is that Newark also just realized that they were losing hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, if I'm a city, and yes, like other cities in Essex County, at least as far as like geographically, where those taxes were higher in order to keep Newark's down, because Newark had a and still does have an infrastructure that, as the biggest city in New Jersey, can be a major driver of economic development. that spreads throughout the rest of the state essentially. As far as on a global scale, being that close to New York City. But yes, Newark was like, and Newark knew it. Like, you're missing out on hundreds of millions of dollars, like, because you're not, your taxes are so cheap. But you also face, that's the business side of it. On the moral side of it, you also realize that raising taxes like crazy on the citizens and the people that are actually contributing to the city might also be detrimental when you're trying to keep the
original population,
and the original individuals, or at least for Newark's case, the black community there. Which, that's also like a political challenge. I mean, but at the end of the day, it was bound to happen, and there's only been so much like time that Newark was able to like hold it down that low. So yeah, no, they have to claim their brand. They have to claim their brand.
Isn't the reassessment hasn't happened yet? So how your taxes went up?
No, it was definitely happening. They
I thought it was in 1 or 2 years or 26.
Yeah, I said 1 and 2 years 2 years ago. I remember specifically.
I could have sworn I saw something online that they were.
I remember 2 years ago.
I remember we spoke about this.
I was like, listen, I made a post about it and everything. I'm like, yo, listen, Newark's reassessment is coming. I forgot where. I don't remember.
It says the reassessment will begin 2025, continue to 2026.
Again,
maybe they started early.
What you mean maybe they started early? They listen. I remember specifically even 2 years ago. I was like 2025. I was like 2025. They're gonna like really like. That's like their date. I remember that specifically, so I'm not even surprised at that. But there was also something like. I don't know if that's the tax year of 2025, and then it's everything prior to, but. That reassessment started early. I am not the only one. And we know people...
23 or 23, happened in 23, right?
23, correct. Yeah. So they doubled my taxes on both those properties. And and we're not the only ones that it wind up happening to.
And both properties weren't even in the same neighborhood. It was separate neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, 2 separate neighborhoods. In Newark, but 2 separate neighborhoods.
Huh.
Yeah. So that was something like, that definitely a challenge. Okay, here's a good one. One of the challenges that home buyers, and this is coming from after the transaction is closed,
okay,
is they underestimated the amount of hidden costs that it comes with home ownership. And they get into the house, everything's all peachy. Next thing you know, the boiler goes $5,000, right? Your mortgage is, I don't know, average starter home $4,000. Average starter home 3-bed, 2-bath, good area, B- area, easy, yeah, $4,000. And in one particular month, you could shell out $10,000 to like keep your household, like keep your house heated. So one of the challenges that people were mentioning was the hidden cost of home ownership and the other stuff that you don't know that comes with it. First off, let's talk about those hidden costs that come with it. Just give us hidden costs that come with home ownership, the costs that are not your down payment, your closing cost, the cost after you closed and have bought your property.
So you have to move to the house. Are you gonna pay for a mover, or are you gonna do it yourself?
I wasn't even thinking about that, but yep, that's one.
So you could dish out a couple thousand depending on the company. I did it myself. I regret it. I'm getting too old to start to move myself.
You never know how much stuff you have until you have to move it all.
You never know how much stuff you have until you have to move.
So you gotta move that.
Yeah, so that's one. Keep that in mind. You have to start paying for water if you don't own a home before. You have to remember that. There's maintenance.
I think people know that. Water, utilities.
Yeah, but if you're renting, you pay for water?
No, but
if
by
you're
the time
renting,
that
do you pay for water?
I mean, I do pay for water, yeah, unfortunately. But naturally, you're not paying for water.
You're not paying for water.
Right. But
and
some
towns, the garbage pickup is not included in the taxes.
Correct. I'll say that one's more of a hidden.
That's a hidden one.
That one's a hidden one.
Because I know people that towns that have to pay, but my town is included with my taxes.
Absolutely. Like Middlesex County, you have to pay for your garbage.
Yep.
Certain spots in Middlesex, certain places.
You have to pay.
Yes. So that one I would say is a hidden one.
Hidden one.
Sewer, when it's not part of the water bill.
Oh, usually it's connect. Okay.
Usually, sometimes sewer. And I say that because I know in Cleveland, sewer and water are two different bills.
Interesting. But is there a detector for the stuff that for the sewer side? Like how they know, or is it like a flat fee every month?
Great question, to be honest with you, and it's so little, I just don't even care.
Gotcha.
But it's not like, you're more focused on like the water bill and making sure like that. But like the sewer bill, I don't know, it might be like $16, $22.
Okay.
And you're not really like, good question, actually.
Electricity might be higher depending on the size of the house. So keep in mind, if you have getting a bigger house, bigger utility bill, bigger electricity bill.
Okay.
Maintenance, 100%, like you said.
Maintenance is definitely hidden.
Maintenance is a hidden because you don't know. So make sure you have a good inspector. Mm-hmm. Make sure you don't really just overpass that inspection. I know a lot of people are buying as is, but make sure you're getting you really know what you're getting yourself into.
Yep.
Because the possibility that the roof, the inspector told you can last 3 years, let's say for the last 6 months.
Right.
A big storm can just wipe it out. Leakage on a roof. A lot of storms are happening now.
That's maintenance.
Maintenance. So maintenance. That's like your boiler. So make sure you have good insurance. Because a lot of insurance policies, you can have like your mechanical, your boiler. If your boiler goes down, there's a lot of things that can be covered within the insurance. So just make sure you get proper coverage.
I would say that, yeah. A random rise in the taxes, hidden cost wise. I'm trying to think if there's any more, like, as far as like hidden, like just
because maintenance is so big, it could be random, so many different
it's everything.
categories.
Anything that you gotta pay to fix.
If you have an oil tank, you have to fill that tank to get heat. So that's something to keep in mind.
And that's based off of whatever.
That can be expensive.
The oil is trading at the current market.
So to fill that up, it could be a couple $100. It could be up to $1,000, depending how big the tank is, right? I never had to fill one up.
I've never had to fill one up.
It could be $500 to $1,000, depending on the size.
I've heard like $1,200 for the year,
so let's say someone buys a house in September. They close, the tank is empty. October, November hits, they need heat, and they got to fill that up. That could be a hidden expense they weren't planning for.
Yeah.
After just closing.
Yeah. No, I think those are solid there. Obviously, buying the more newer homes eliminates a little bit of the risk when it comes down to repairs, maintenance, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And the older home, the home that you actually choose to go after. Just keep that part in mind when, just factor in potential costs and things like that. Mm-hmm.
Also, renovation, if you do a full renovation, that helps as well. If you're doing the entire house. Now, if you're doing just patches here and there.
Right. Yep, nope, I'm here for it. All right. The great debate, and we'll go into some seller challenges, but the great debate, I don't want to spend too much time on your topic, but in a very easy response, give me your thought process, renting versus owning in 2025.
With the prices that I've seen in these luxury apartments, if I'm comparing it to that specifically, I would say owning.
New Jersey's screwed, and listen, it's still going to come down to what you want to pay, like your monthly living expense. But I don't know. I think New Jersey has turned into a state where both renting and owning have now almost has the ability to be on a very even scale.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I just what did I see? An article regard of there's no state in the U.S. that if you get minimum wage and work 40 hours, you can't
afford
rent anywhere.
Yep. And I mean, owning wise, is it always going to be better to own than to rent? I think that conversation is starting to change. I think it is.
You speaking of New Jersey specifically?
I think everywhere.
Okay.
In America. And the only reason why is because naturally, when looking at like that particular decision, you will automatically assume owning.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You only choose owning for the investment purpose.
Correct.
But now we got into a space where there's so much information on other asset classes that you can get the same, if not better return,
okay,
over time, quicker, and thus solving the same desire of putting your money in a place where you will have it
but
later.
not so let me play devil's advocate now. So you said there's different investment vehicles.
Yep.
But for that investment vehicle is a 1-to-1 ratio within what the growth is, because if you're putting 10,000 in that investment, you're only getting the growth on that 10,000.
I agree.
But if you're buying a house at a low entry point, a 3.5% down, that growth is on the purchase.
I agree.
Which is you're getting lent 96.5%.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting the growth on the full amount, not only on the initial investment.
Yeah, no, that makes
so it could be a 10% increase, but the real estate is going to be a higher because of the leverage.
Absolutely. I totally agree. As long as you're able to make it until that point with everything in between.
No crash.
Right? So, or I won't say crash, but anything that just naturally happens with real estate and everything that can happen.
So no like holding costs.
No, all of that.
This doesn't have holding costs. This has.
So for like perfect example, right? So somebody buys a single family, right? Somebody buys a single family for $300,000. It says it right on the closing disclosure. If they never sell the property, if they don't sell the property for 30 years, like they sell the property when they pay it off, right? With the interest rates, for a person that's paying $300,000, by the time that it is all said and done,
with
you wind up paying like $1 million, right?
Not $1 million, but probably
900
for a 300K home. Nah.
Let's look at it.
Run the numbers. Probably
I'm
like
running
6.
the numbers right now.
Probably like 600, 7.
And we're gonna do
with
FHA.
interest.
We're gonna do FHA loan.
FHA, yeah.
300,000. 3.5% down. Let's go at an interest rate of 6.
Interest is tax deductible.
That's cool. That's cool. You're still paying it. And it's tax deductible, but the same way that you gave me the 1-to-1 ratio, it is not tax deductible in the 1-to-1 ratio. So it just lowers your potential taxable income.
Let's see. Okay.
Right? So, all right, 300,000.
So 300K. Go ahead. How much?
6% down. Over the loan, total of all payments, and this is with taxes of $3,750, which we know in New Jersey. So we're going to do an average of $10,000, bare minimum. Home insurance at, let's just call it $1,800.
Yeah, $1,800.
Right?
Yeah, it's going rising.
Total, if you buy that house day one and don't do anything, taxes don't rise. They don't rise. Homeowners insurance don't rise. Nothing changes for 30 years. Total of all the payments is $1,041,558.
With taxes and insurance.
With taxes and insurance, correct.
Okay.
So
for 30 years.
Over 30 years.
How much was the monthly payment?
The monthly payment was $2,800.
All right, so you still have to.
So you still have to contribute.
You still have somewhere to live.
You still have somewhere to live.
You still have to have monthly rent payment on this side.
I totally agree.
All right.
I'll totally agree. However, this is all factoring if nothing else happens. You don't drop a dime into the property
You buy new construction
for another 30 years.
Okay.
You're already at triple, almost 369, more than that.
Triple.
You're more than triple it. So then, in 300,000, mind you, in $300,000.
How much is that property going to be worth, you think, in 30 years?
In 30 years, let's just say it triples in value.
Okay.
That's a lot. 369. That's a lot.
900.
That's a lot. Now, again, let's just say, all right, the property's worth
So basically, we're getting most of the money back.
that you already paid, right? But you're using it as an investment vehicle.
Yes. Okay. But let's say you put the same amount of money into the investment vehicle, but you still need somewhere to live.
Correct.
So
Correct.
you're going to have to use that amount as well as the...
Absolutely.
Okay. So what's the cash on cash return on something like that now? I don't even think we have time left.
You can't even do cash on cash return because you're not making a profit for, at least from the single family.
Well, yeah.
But
correct,
off the rental property,
Sorry,
off the rental property is the only time that it kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
but don't get me
monthly-wise.
wrong, it'll. I think for New Jersey, I think the conversation might be even. Now, I think the fundamental difference is between. I think more of the conversation now is stability. So I'll say from a family aspect of it, if they were like renting a house. Every time there's a problem, they call their landlord. They know that their rent is going to be $4,000. There's nothing else, and that's it, right? Plus the utility, whatever the case. But I think from a stability aspect of it, that where the ownership kind of trumps the renting aspect of it. In that case, but renting in this day and age could have the potential to provide more financial stability, knowing day in and day out how much something is going to cost and knowing that you don't have to spend a dime over that.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to buy a house has an old furnace or beat up that it needs it's going to be, of course, if you're going against that, then yeah, renting would be better because you're going to dish out so much money.
Still pros and cons. And still home ownership is still, I mean, again, I think now maybe it might, when I say pretty even, it might be a 55-45, where it's still 55, it's going to be, 55% is better to be owning. But now it's not as, probably I think before it was like 90% owning, 10% renting.
But I know we said taxes are increasing, but in these luxury buildings, didn't I see that? Do they have rent control? I could have sworn people are just
and they have
jumping.
Rent control.
They do have rent control.
And they have rent control, which is why
I thought for some of them, some people were getting $500, $600 increases.
Possibly. But, I mean, mine was only doing it at 5%.
Oh, okay.
Which is like, or 3%, between 3 and 5%, but it's good because like, at least I know.
What
and it's crazy
be.
because where I locked in, this is where the interesting part about it is, which is kind of similar to like locking in at a good mortgage rate or monthly payment or a good price. But when I got into it, like if I would have literally pack up my stuff, leave, and apply for the same apartment, it would be $450 to $500 more. Because all the new ones that are people that are trying to go after are that particular price.
Gotcha.
So in that case, like it's just something to at least think about. But
so you're saying buy real estate and wait? That's what you're saying? That's what you're getting to?
At the end of the day, 55% of the time, right? You give me 10 scenarios, it's going to be more than half. I'm always going to err on the side of ownership, 150%. But I think for New Jersey, where people are like, hey, we have a scenario, we're renting right now, but we want to own, we want to be owners, we want to buy the home. And it's just like, yeah, I understand, but it's not as that clear cut of a decision financially as it was previously. So it's just something to think about.
Looks like we don't have time for sellers. That's gonna be part 2.
Well, give me a 30-second, right? Like because we talked about buyers, and kind of the biggest thing that I'm seeing with sellers is just the fact that the only ones that are truly, truly, truly selling, and when I say the ones that have to, I'm just saying like the ones that like, unless they're in an emergency, if they are moving out of the state, those are pretty much the sellers that are really like making a move or looking to retire. because a lot of the sellers that are maybe like our age or that have been established for a little bit and would like to upgrade or maybe try to go after a different property, they don't want to sell and then get back into these current market conditions when they have like kind of the stuff like that they got going for them. So that's kind of the only challenge that I see the sellers kind of going after or facing. Majority of them are still up like crazy, and it's not that. It's what to do with the money after they sell, and where do they move after they sell when they've been in such a a great position. But I mean, there's not really much you can do. I mean, I've advised sellers like, listen, if it's doing what it's supposed to do, then there's nothing for you to do. Like, you might as well hold it, right? Like, unless there's a truly a need, then I wouldn't recommend it, right? So. And they want to, but it's like I can't do nothing for you because we're like, how are we going to actually put a transaction together if you don't even, what's the plan after? Like, you can't just like be like, yo, I want to sell with no plan after. So it's, I'm advising sellers off of that. But all right, I will just start our descent here. That's the only thing that I'm really seeing on the sell side. And then as far as the investors, I mean, they're experiencing, kind of the same thing that like over time has been happening, which is kind of the declining in the potential rental profits, which we advised earlier that, one of the ways that we can kind of mitigate that is with diversification, where we have a unit that's available for some type of different type of tenant that usually is either paying more, like short-term rentals, or maybe you have that spot and set it up as a photo shoot gallery or art studio that people can rent, or
niche.
And you know what I mean? A very niche type of like something that you can like turn it into a business instead of just a regular long-term tenant or government Section 8 TRA type of tenant for the rental properties. For the rental profits. And then like as far as like the decline in for profits, I mean, there's just not, I mean, obviously sellers have caught on where they're a lot more smarter now, but finding ways to obviously negotiate the best deal possible. And, from there, it's more just a lead generation thing. And this is just where the market is at, right? Like there's nothing really that we can do about it. So we've expected and have seen things take a back seat when it comes down to investing. But at the same time, still purely and clearly an asset class that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of transactions and hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars that are moving within real estate. So obviously stuff is clearly happening. Yeah, man, that's what I got with that. As far as like top challenges, was there anything else that you got?
No, I'm good.
Those are the top challenges that kind of I've been seeing that people are kind of complaining about. I mean, obviously, again, besides the low inventory, high interest, but that's been the story for the past couple of years. So that's nothing new. But in 2025, these are some different challenges that are presenting itself that, we just got to find a way to work through. But all that to say is that, like I said, people are buying, people are selling, people are still investing.
Business as usual.
Business as usual. Politics as usual. We didn't get a chance to talk about the California wildfires, but and what that does to the real estate market over there. But politics as usual, business as usual. People are buying, selling, investing, and still what I believe is probably the best asset class that's out there because of Soto's point earlier, being able to experience these maximum returns while only putting very little down. And at that point, the will to go on, we'll see the results. But the agents that are out there, the fellow investors and other real estate professionals out there are here to guide you on your journey, whether it's buying your first home, buying your next home, or buying multiple homes. The resources are definitely there for you to be able to succeed in the real estate market in 2025. So, with that said, This is Austin, aka More Than an Agent, and as your host and as my co-host, John Soto. John does real estate. This is the Real Estate Blueprint Podcast. Signing off.